So now, ladies and gentlemen, live and in colour, it's Mr. Wayne Love Juice.
The other day our producer Louis had a chat with an interesting chappie who said that the YouTube algorithms really aren't that happy if a channel only broadcasts once a week, so we decided we could text ya whenever we've got a piece of news in our new book on the Track Extra.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of On the Track Extra. For those of you with long memories, you'll remember that when my late wife was still alive, she did a regular show, or regular segment of the show, called Watcher of the Skies, in which she looked at rare birds in Britain, strange, vagrant, out-of-place birds, and weird bird behaviour from around the world. When she died, I decided I was going to let the show, that part of the show, because it was hers. I wanted it to die with her, because I didn't think anybody could do it justice after all the years that she'd been doing it. But I had so many people complain that it was their favourite part of the show and they wanted to come back, that especially after I had a long chat with Dave Scott from CSA Canada. Hi Dave, you're a good bloke, we all love you. Especially after talking to Dave Scott, I reinstated it. And here is another episode of it.
I have always felt a curious affinity with this species of bird, probably because for 30 years I was a secretary, and this is a secretary bird, a highly specialised ground-dwelling bird of prey from an older family than the other Old World raptors. It is native to sub-Saharan Africa and is sadly non-migratory, so will never be a natural visitor to these shores. But I think you'd be surprised quite how many completely unexpected avian visitors Britain does have, and that's what this segment of On the Track is all about. Bernard Heuvelmans himself said that cryptozoology wasn't the study of monsters, but the study of unexpected animals, and in the UK what could be more unexpected than vultures, spoonbills and albatrosses? Yes, even the kings of the Southern Ocean have been seen in British waters. 2 species of albatross have been recorded in the UK in recent years. Not all of our feathered visitors are quite so spectacular, but nearly every day there is something exciting to greet the Watcher of the Skies.
The most interesting, not to say bizarre, British birding news for quite a long time, really, it happened in February, the end of February, in North Wales. John Donne, and by the way, I recommend that you read John Donne's book about British orchids. It is one of the best natural history books I've read in years. John Donne wrote in the Rare Bird Alert, which I found here on X, the thing that used to be called Twitter. Should we be surprised that this week a white tern had been picked up in Gwynedd in Llanberis and taken into care? Well, obviously yes. This is a tropical seabird after all, and there's no precedent for one being found anywhere in the Western Palearctic. But then again, in these strangest of days, maybe not so much. Now, Alex Lees and James Gilroy wrote 4 years ago, even some pelagic tropical terns, considered largely resident, have been recorded extensively as vagrants. For example, white tern Gurkis alba has been recorded from Bermuda, the Bahamas and mainland India, and Thailand corpses have been found as far south as New Zealand. Most impressively, Tropical Storm Nakwi wrecked a white tern 110 kilometers inland in Chungbuk Province, South Korea, in August 2014, their first national record. This species would seem like a good candidate to occur as a vagrant to the Atlantic islands of the western Palearctic or at sea in the Gulf Stream off the eastern United States. And John went on to write, judging by the photo released of the bird found this week, it seems to be of the Candida Pacific and Indian Ocean white tern group. Not that this can be judged any barrier to vagrancy, because one of these birds was found in Bermuda on the 7th to 9th of December 1972, the first of its kind in the North Atlantic, and it was a Candida individual. The photo of the bird was distributed widely on social media, and John wrote, "So what remains to be done now? Hopefully the bird survives and recovers in care. Hopefully there won't be a repeat of the well-intentioned but mishandled and absolutely tragic repatriation of the 2016 St Leonards-on-Sea in East Sussex red-footed booby. Hopefully birders won't let themselves down by hassling whatever facilities housing the bird in an attempt to see it before it's released. And hopefully, if it does eventually recover and is about to be released in Britain, let's hope it's released somewhere that the bird's welfare is held primarily in mind, not somewhere where birders can assemble to see it for themselves on the wing." Well, the story continued. The white tern, or common white tern, is a small seabird found across the tropical oceans of the world. It's sometimes known as the fairy tern, although this name is potentially confusing as it's also the common name of Sternula nereus. Other names for this species include angel tern and white noddy in English and manouku in Hawaiian. In the Cook Islands it's known as kakaya. I was very familiar with this bird when I was a boy. They're beautiful little seabirds, but I never thought that I'd find that one would turn up in British waters. Now this is where it starts getting a bit confusing. Although the white tern was first formally described by the Swedish naturalist Anders Sparman in 1786, modern molecular phylogenetic studies have shown that the white tern is more closely related to the noddies than it is to other terns. This implies that white noddy would be a more appropriate English name. The white tern has 4 accepted subspecies. Now this is where it does get complicated. There is the nominate subspecies, which is Gyges alba alba. These are found in the islands of the South Tropical Atlantic Ocean, including Fernando de Noronha, Trinidad, Ascension and St Helena. The next subspecies is Candida, which is found on the Indian Ocean islands, Seychelles, Mascarene Islands and southern Maldives east to the Central Pacific Ocean, but excluding range of the other 2 subspecies. There is Leucopes, which is found on the Henderson and Pitcairn Islands. It's similar to Candida but with pale grey legs, and there's Microhyla, which is found in the Line Islands, Marquesas Islands, Phoenix Islands and Kiribati. A latest study, however, has gone further and suggested there may be 3 species of Gyges, with Gyges alba in the Atlantic Ocean, Gyges candida in the Indian and western to central Pacific Ocean, and Gyges microhincha in the southeast central Pacific. Now, as we have seen, there is a population of one of the species of the white tern, let's assume for the moment that they are distinct species, in the South Atlantic, but the one that turned up in Gwynedd, which is, by the way, for those of you who don't know, in the part of North Wales just south, bordering upon Anglesey. The tern that turned up there was definitely, and has been identified in multiple times, and here's Richard bringing me a donut, as being from the Indo-Pacific species or subspecies. So how the bloody hell did it get to North Wales? Because, as I believe I said earlier, this is the first time it's ever been recorded in the Western Palearctic. The nearest known place that they can be found naturally is on the western side of the Panama Canal, and that's the nearest known place that it can be found to the British Isles. So, any ideas, Richard, how on earth did it get all the way from somewhere in the Indo-Pacific region to North Wales on a grey, nasty February morning?
Perhaps it roosted on a boat or a ship and came over that way.
I've often wondered whether, I know there is a delineation between birds that have been found naturally on our shores, which have come as natural vagrants, and birds that have been deliberately released. But I wonder where birds that have turned up through a human vector, but not deliberately, I wonder how that happened. I wonder where that counts.
Well, the ringneck parakeets were a gradual thing, weren't they? They escaped from captivity here and there, and there's one theory that some of them naturally came here. But the main theory is that the ringneck parakeets you get written out. They didn't all get out from the filming of The African Queen, or there wasn't a pair released by Jimi Hendrix. They were people's pets that got out gradually and built up and bred because they can withstand the cold, because they're found in the Himalayas.
I've always hoped the Jimi Hendrix story was true, because then we could have said that there's a new British colour morph called the Purple Haze, which would have been quite fun.
He may have released a pair of ringneck parakeets, but he was only adding to a growing population.
Yeah, the earliest records of them in Britain was in the late 19th century, I believe.
I saw more in Surbiton than I did in India.
They live in Hong Kong, and I only ever saw one wild in Hong Kong. And every time I go to London, I see them in certain counties. But that is slight digression. I don't know what you think, Richard, but I think the fact that such a bizarre out-of-place bird has happened, and it's not the only one, because last October there was a specimen of a bird called a Barrow's petrel, and the main breeding colony for them is on the Indian Ocean island of Reunion, which is where the solitaire, which may or may not have been a relation of the dodo, once lived. And that turned up in France last October. So these things do make ridiculous journeys out of their natural habitat. And I'm not doing a Charlie Fort here. I'm not saying that they're part of some celestial Sargasso sea that likes to drop animals out of place in strange places. But the fact that this bird and the one back in October have made such enormous leaps from where they're meant to be found, I think is quite important from both a cryptozoological and a general ecological point of view, because somehow two species of seabird have translocated from nearly the other side of the world, and I for one would like to know why and how, because I think this is quite important, don't you?
Yeah, and you would think if they were blown off course, blown here, there'd be more than one specimen, and there'd be other birds from that part of the world as well.
Now, bizarrely, sounding like Charlie Fort and the Celestial Sargasso Sea, that's the argument that is always given by people researching for Frotskis who want to know why, when you have a fish fall, don't you also have a seaweed fall and a tadpole fall all in the same area, if they are indeed lifted up into the air like Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz by a whirlwind.
Yeah, and it's generally only one species of fish. I think there are some cases where there have been a couple of species, but generally it's only one species of fish, isn't it? And they all tend to be a similar sort of size.
And so you have got that, which is something which I could throw back at you as an answer to why is there only one turned up out of place. But because these terns are social creatures. I've seen them flying in reasonably large groups in the waters off Hong Kong. Okay, this was 55 years ago. But something strange is happening, and I for one would like to know what it is. Well, the story continued for a couple of weeks, but sadly, what was almost inevitably going to happen did happen, and the bird died. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu said, the more we see, the less we know. And I know I've quoted that before on the Track and on the Track Extra, but that's because the further you look into these things, the more confusing it gets. This started off just as a picture I saw of a pretty looking seabird on Twitter, or what used to be Twitter, and it has thrown up quite a labyrinthine quest involving another species from the island of one of the islands of the Dodo, and the fact that nobody knows how many species of this bird there actually are, and there are arguments going on all the time. I'll bring you updates as and when we get them. And I want to say a big thank you to Richard for joining in at the last moment and for giving me a donut. I'm going to be back on Saturday. What are we doing on Saturday? Well, you're just going to bloody well have to wait and see, aren't you? But if you're there watching, and I'm there doing all the gubbins I do on a Saturday afternoon, I will most certainly be seeing you.